Graduates Conversations podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Conversations Interpreting and Translating podcast. I can say today for the first time we are doing this in person with Associate Professor Bianca Brijnath from NARI, and it is so good to actually have a conversation with someone in person.
It's exciting.
Very exciting. We've been doing this for the last about 8 months via Zoom, and yes, it has been definitely fun doing it on Zoom, and I've been able to reach a lot of people from around Australia and overseas as well. But to be actually doing this in person and, as it says, conversation, it's so good to be doing it with you as well, Associate Professor Bianca. So today we're going to be talking with Bianca, who is the Divisional Director of Social Gerontology at the National Aging Research Institute, which is NARI. And we're going to be talking particularly about the mindset study, which is a study that just got a federal government funding. So I want to congratulate you about that first, Bianca.
Thank you.
And can you please tell me a little bit about this study? Now, you are the chief investigator for this study. What is the mindset study, Bianca?
So mindset stands for, it's a bit of a jumbled acronym, but it basically stands for Improving Interpreter-Mediated Cognitive Assessment for Dementia. It's a big mouthful. So
that's a mouthful indeed.
So that's why we just thought, right, mindset's it's a nice acronym that sort of falls out of it. Look, the crux of this study is we want to improve interpreter training for dementia assessment. And we want to improve the quality of an interpreter-mediated cognitive assessment for dementia. And if our training works, we want to implement this training such that it can be available to every interpreter in Australia who wants it.
That is magnificent news. Now, why the focus on interpreters? Now, we know that, maybe before that, tell us a little bit about dementia and how it affects Australians, and what is the current demography at the moment with dementia? What's it heading towards? And then maybe can you give us some figures about the percentage of culturally and linguistically diverse people with dementia now and how it might change in the future? Sure. I mean, there's a reason why you're focusing on interpreters,
That's
I guess,
right. Yes.
But maybe give us a little bit of background information on that.
Yeah, so look, we don't have very good data in Australia about the true prevalence of dementia across the country, but we certainly know it is an increasingly important issue, and it's the number one cause of death in women.
Wow.
Dementia is, regrettably, it's incurable, and it is basically cognitive decline. So it's much more than just memory loss. It's a loss of function. It's a loss of activity, capacity to do things, to, I guess, be independent, to speak. And that's really important with these interpreter-mediated assessments, because one of the critical symptoms of dementia is what we call aphasia, or loss of language. So everybody eventually does it. You know, as you kind of progress through this disease, you do lose your language. But the order in which you lose your language really depends on the order in which you learnt your language. So the general rule of thumb is last in, first out. So if English is your second or third or fourth or fifth language, odds are you lose that first before you will lose the language that you learnt as a little child. So your kind of mother tongue, so to speak. Now, there's no cure for dementia, and Australia is an aging society, and dementia is related to aging. So as people get older, the odds of us having more dementia in our community is on the increase. And we estimate by 2050 we'll have about 1 million people in the country who will be living with it.
Wow, that's quite a big part of the population, isn't it?
It is a very big part of the population, and now related to that is the fact that we also have a growing migrant population, or a growing culturally and linguistically diverse population in this country.
Australia's always been
Yes.
Welcoming to migration.
Yes.
Whether it be, I guess, going all the way back to the gold rush you had Chinese migrants coming in, and then I think World War II, there was a lot of migration, Vietnam War, and then most recently, I guess, Middle East and also Horn of Africa countries. So the demography of the migrants, the immigrants, is changing as well. So what kind of languages will it be focusing on? Which languages will the study be focusing on?
So our study is going to focus on 6 languages. It's going to focus on Greek, Italian, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Cantonese, and Arabic.
Wow. Yeah.
But those languages, I guess, reflect in many ways both established migrant communities that may have come post-World War II, or like the Chinese, you said, might have been here since the gold rush period, but also more new arrivals who might have come from places like Syria or the Middle East or other places where they're speaking Arabic, for example. And one of the things that we've noticed is, look, we've always been welcoming of migrants, but migrants are also, not all migrants are the same. And people have different trajectories and journeys that they've embarked on. So I guess the migrants that came, post World War II were mainly from Southern Europe, from Greece and Italy. But the migrants we have coming to Australia today are mainly from Asia. That's and right. As you identified, from Africa and increasingly from Oceania, that's Papua New Guinea and Fiji and those sorts of places as well. So we've got to grapple with the fact that our kind of cohorts and our groups are changing. And so the communities that are getting assistance now may not be the communities that really need help into the future. So we've got to deal with that. And the scale of migration in Australia has been on a steady sort of increase in some ways. And by virtue of just population aging, we estimate that there's going to be about a 200% increase in some of the kind of language needs and cultural needs in certain communities, mainly from Asia, by 2050.
So the study focuses on interpreter training.
Yes.
So why interpreter training? Can you give us an example of what kind of situations interpreters may have found themselves in, why the need to focus on the interpreter? And also, can you please explain to us how the study will actually roll out, how it will work and what it aims to do?
Sure. So we are focusing on interpreters in part because interpreters themselves in our previous research have told us that they want more training on dementia and how to do a cognitive assessment for dementia. It's, one of the things about being an interpreter, you'd know better than me, Fatih, is it's a really challenging role.
It is, right? Indeed.
It's a very challenging role. And, you, especially if you're a community-based interpreter, you could be interpreting for a legal issue or something else, and then you get an appointment at a hospital and you turn up and it says, well, go to building so-and-so and floor so-and-so and room so-and-so, and you get, then you think, well, what's this all about? And you walk in and it's a memory clinic.
Yeah.
And you think, well, where am I? What happened? And there's the doctor, there's the patient, and off you go. And you think, how am I going to mediate this and interpret for this session on dementia if I don't know what it is?
That's right. And those assessments at a memory clinic can be so difficult sometimes to interpret.
Very challenging, because you're grappling not just with issues around what constitutes a cognitive assessment, but you also need to know what dementia is, what some of the symptoms are, and what's in a cognitive assessment that the clinician is really looking to try and assess in the patient. And the patient themselves, may or may not be cognitively fully intact. That's why they're there. It's really about facilitating a diagnosis. So, their speech may be disordered, they may be a little vague, they're going to probably be very agitated and nervous because they're in an unfamiliar setting. We all feel a bit anxious when we go to a hospital, and so they're likely to feel the same. And you imagine the overlay of dementia, it can be quite a challenging situation for an interpreter to manage. And if you're not trained, it's really hard to do a very good job.
And like you said, I mean, anyone else with a job that is, I guess, more mainstream, you'd be focusing on the same things day in, day out, okay? Yeah. And you concentrate on doing the same thing, you kind of get used to it. The challenges are different, but as an interpreter, like you mentioned earlier, you might be interpreting at a dental appointment, and then you go and interpret at the court, and then you go to a memory clinic. So, the interpreter has to prepare for 3, 4, 5 different contexts on a daily basis.
Yes.
And, if they don't know how to do the research, if they don't have, I guess, the resources there for training, it's going to be very difficult for them.
Yep.
So congratulations on you again and your team for focusing on the interpreter training, especially within dementia. And like you were saying, we're dealing with, as the interpreter, you're dealing with the assessment tool, the doctor, the aim and purpose of that particular appointment, and then you're also dealing with a person there with dementia. So it's really important to, I guess, expect certain things, anticipate certain things that might happen with this person.
Yes.
Their speech, their cognition, their agitation levels, right? So all of a sudden there are so many different demands and challenges here for the interpreter.
And don't forget, time is a very precious commodity in a hospital. So, if you've designated, if the consultation is designated to be an hour or half an hour or 40 minutes, and you as the interpreter are not entirely sure, and you're taking a bit longer to kind of understand and interpret what's happening, people get impatient.
That's right.
It adds more stress. And if you make a mistake, it can really derail that entire assessment. Just to give you a little example, there are some of the words that apply, or terminology that applies for dementia in different languages can be very pejorative, right? For example, I come from India, I speak Hindi. So one of the words we have in Hindi for dementia that's used is pagalpan, madness. Now, can you imagine in a cognitive assessment, if by accident you were uncertain, you're under pressure, and you said, oh, well, the doctor's here to assess if you're mad? It's going to, create a very big problem.
It's going to be a bit challenging.
It's going to be really hard, right? Everyone's going to get upset with you. And look, but it's not that a mistake or an error happens comes from a place of ill intent. It's because you haven't had an opportunity to train yourself and to upskill yourself. And
That's
so
right.
our study is really about giving people that opportunity.
And, to be honest with you, the interpreter does not make a lot of money. So getting out there and finding training and paying for training is going to be quite difficult for the interpreter. And, I can say that because I have worked as an interpreter and I still do. So how are you going to train the interpreter? What does it entail? You mentioned a little bit earlier about giving training about dementia itself and its symptoms. What else is there? Can you give us a little bit of an outline? I know, look, I've read your proposal. There's about 70 pages there. So maybe not 70 pages long worth, but in a nutshell, can you explain to us how the training will be actually given to these interpreters?
Yes. So the first and most important thing about this grant is that the training will be co-designed with interpreters and clinicians.
Okay, that's very important.
And family carers, and if we can, people with dementia as well in the process. That's really important. We believe in that co-design process because we want to make sure it has absolute relevance to the end user, in this case the interpreter and clinicians as well. But so the first thing is co-design. The second thing is what we are focusing on in our co-design is working with interpreters and the other stakeholders to really understand from them what are the common phrases that are used in a memory assessment, right? What are the common what's a user-friendly terminology we might think about using to describe dementia in different languages?
Even coming up with new terminology,
That's
perhaps.
right, yes.
Because you were saying sometimes it means madness.
Yeah, well, that's not going to work,
No,
is
it's not
it?
going to work. And if there is not another word, maybe you start putting something together.
Yes, so, as an interpreter, how can you be agile and think on your feet about a terminology or phraseology that might be better suited and more user-friendly? So things like that. We want to train interpreters in getting them across what are good culture-fair cognitive assessments, because there's lots of cognitive assessments that are not culture-fair, so we want to train them in the culture-fair ones. So you sort of know what's coming and you know why those questions are being asked and you know how to kind of interpret for it. And we want them to obviously be across the NADI Code of Ethics for interpreting, and also just how to facilitate sort of general communication within a memory clinic.
And how are you going to actually deliver the training? And is it going to be national?
Yes.
Is there a focus pilot area? Tell us a bit about that.
Right. So we finish the co-design, and then what we do is we do a trial, a randomized control trial, where interpreters will have access to the training. But we'll have a group where one group will get access, and one group's going to get waitlisted. Right. So they're our control group. So we use this a lot in medical research, where there's sort of an intervention and a control arm. So one lot gets it, and the other lot gets it 6 months later, and then we're gonna. It's all online. And we will assess their performance online as well, or rather not me or my team, it will be NADI accredited assessors who'll do that work. So it's really interpreters assessing their own, sort of a peer assessment. And we're confident that our training will work and will do the job that it's supposed to do. And then we're going to definitely after that, so that's national. And after that, we're going to roll out that training in a big push across the state of Victoria. Well, our aim is to get at least 70% of interpreters in the languages I mentioned earlier to do the training in Victoria. It's about 1,500 interpreters. So we want 70% of them to take it up. And and then after that, we hand it over to NADI and to the industry, because at the end of the day, look, I'm a researcher, and I'm at NARI, but if you're an interpreter and you're looking for training, you're not going to come to NARI. You're going to go to the industry, and this has to be industry driven.
How does the research completed and the studies done and the training is controlled and checked, and now you said, okay, this is it, we want to make it available.
Yep.
How does the interpreter get this training?
So we're going to liaise with our industry partners, and this is what makes this particular grant really exciting. So we have a lot of industry partners on this project, including NATI, including all graduates interpreting, including OZIT. Most recently, we had DIS National come on board, which is fantastic. We've got Dementia Australia, and we've got the Migration Council of Australia, the Migration Health Partnership. So it's fantastic to have all of these partners, and they're national, and they're tapped into the interpreter workforce, and they're really the networks and partners we will galvanize to push the message out.
That's great. And within regards to these interpreters, how are you going to recruit them? How are you going to find them for your study?
Similarly, through our partners. So we've got a few criteria, but they're not hugely stringent. And so we will push the message out through our partners and through their networks to recruit interpreters.
Bianca, now this is a major project, and with all the experience that you do have and the passion that you do have, I guess you're not doing this all by yourself. No. So who else is in your team, and who are the partners in this project?
So we've got a very large team of researchers from around the country, from, for example, the Royal Melbourne Hospital, Melbourne University, Monash University, RMIT, the University of Sydney, the University of Newcastle, and of course, researchers from NARI themselves.
Big team.
Big team. And we've got, within this team, we've got a lot of multidisciplinary expertise. So we've got a geriatrician, a medical educator, an interpreter educator, interpreters, people who specialize in cross-cultural communication and working with multicultural communities, biostatisticians. So quite a mix of people. Our industry partners are NATI, and they've been both generous cash and in-kind contributors, all graduates interpreting, very generous cash and in-kind contributors. We've got in-kind contributions from Dementia Australia, the New South Wales Health Interpreter Service, OZIT, and the Migration Council of Australia through their Migration and Health Partnership.
Magnificent. So a big thank you and kudos to those partners.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yes, we would not be where we are today, which is just at the starting line, but we wouldn't even be at the starting line if it wasn't for these partners.
Magnificent. I guess we've been talking about partners. You also received federal government funding for this. Are we allowed to say how much all up the funding is?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Look, so the funding comes from the National Health and Medical Research Council of Australia, and they have something called a partnership grant scheme. So they match the funding that the industry provides. So I guess the most important thing with this study is that it's industry-led, it's industry-driven, it's meeting industry need. And so what we had to do, which, surprisingly, it wasn't me walking the footpaths for too long, because I think there's such a lot of demand, is that, we went to the partners that I mentioned before, and we said to them, look, we recognize this need. We'd like to do the research to help you out here. If, do you think this is something you could support? And all of the partners have come back, to varying extents and said, yes, we can support this. And then the National Health and Medical Research Council have matched that cash and in-kind contribution. So the total value of our grant, as it currently stands, is about $580,000.
Wow! Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's quite a bit of money, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot, and hopefully it will be enough to get us over the line.
I was going to say, is it? I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but is it enough to get this study through to actually reach your goals?
We hope so.
Okay.
Look, I'm a researcher. My whole life is spent
chasing grants.
Chasing grants. That's right. So I'm never going to say the money's enough. but in this,
I don't think anyone is, to be honest.
Well, that's right. But look, it's enough to hopefully get us to where we need to go, and that's the really critical thing.
How long is the study going to go
3 years.
for? 3 years.
Yeah.
3 years. And when's it going to start?
This year.
This year?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, very soon.
Yeah, so I'm really hopeful that we can start doing our co-design process by the end of the year. Get our training up and running, ready to go by early next year.
Magnificent. Well, congratulations
Thanks.
again. Looking forward to the results, and I know that All Graduates is on board as well as one of the partners, so we'll be following very, very closely. Yes. And always happy to support. So congratulations again, and thank you so much for leading this study, and good luck with it all.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was Conversations, Interpreting, Translating podcast. Today I had Associate Professor Bianca Brijnath from NARI, and we heard about the mindset study. I will also put a link to the study in the episode description, so you can find out a little bit more about what it aims to do and the partnering organizations. And watch this space. So looking forward to the results and also the ultimate training as well. Thanks very much, and we will see you in the next episode. As always, please do not forget to subscribe to our channels and also hit the notification button so you get notified whenever there's a new episode. Thanks very much, and have a lovely day wherever you are.
All Graduates Conversations podcast.